So I'm Herminio Garcia Gonzalez, and I'm gonna present this time everything for the users, nothing by the users, lessons learned from a heterogeneous data mapping languages user study. So we are using declarative mapping rules for data integration endeavors because they offer faster and more flexible process, and we have to invest less time and resources. So the final goal is to ease users' workflow. And in addition, some of the existing languages claim to be user-friendly. This is the case of Yarn and XML, while others claim to be easy to learn by semantic web experts. This is the case of SparkQL Generate, but this is not quantified. So the semantic web community used to center on new features and technical improvement. And if we search for an historical analogy, this is like the enlightened despotism. So this is why I have named this presentation Everything for the Users, Nothing by the Users. But there are recent trends that claim to develop more user-centric approaches. So the idea is to understand users and improve their productivity. So they are a huge analysis tool to decide future actions on a topic. To the best of my knowledge, only our recent study has tackled this aspect for heterogeneous data mapping languages, so we are going to briefly summarize and explain it. And from its outcomes, we are going to envisage next actions in the community. So the idea is to better understand and address users' problems. So let's see a brief experiment description. So we selected the languages which goal is to be user-friendly. So this is the case of SparkQL Generate, Yarn, and XML. And why not include RDF-based syntax approaches? Because of their verbosity. Because solutions are much longer, so this is not fair, and it is a bias from the beginning in the experiment. So therefore, we selected the languages which goal is to be user-friendly, and also that they offer a similar syntax in terms of verbosity. So we ran for a mixed method approach with a quantitative part involving the measure of objective variables, so behavioral and performance metrics, and also a qualitative part involving the measure of subjective variables, so to say the user's perceptions. And in addition, qualitative results can give a better understanding of quantitative results. So our sample were 20 students of the Master in Web Engineering, and they were randomly assigned to languages. So they were receiving a semantic web course where they were introduced to technologies like RDF, SparkQL, Shape Expressions, among others, and we hosted the experiment the final day of the course. So looking to the profile of the sample, we can say that they are first-time users with some background knowledge. And we divided the experiment in two different tasks. The task one was about to generate mapping rules given a set of inputs and a desired output, and the task number two was to modify the previously generated mapping rules to match a new output. So let's see the results and highlights of this experiment. So we ran a statistical analysis and hypothesis testing with pairwise comparison. We'll come back later to this in further slides. So the results for task one quantitative analysis is that there are significant differences on elapsed seconds between XML and Yarn, and in completeness percentage and precision between XML and SparkQL Generate. But there were no significant differences on keystrokes, so we can say that there's no difference in language verbosity, and there's also no significant differences in left and right button clicks, mouse wheel scroll, and meters traveled by the mouse. So we can say that they were using a similar web playground, and that the web playground offered by the languages is not having an effect in the results of our experiment. So for task one qualitative analysis, we see significant differences on general satisfaction and easiness of use between XML and Yarn, and in learnability and mapping definition easiness between XML and both the other languages. So these differences align with quantitative ones. So difficulties in SparkQL Generate are related to worse learnability and mapping definition easiness, and more time consumed by Yarn users is related to lower levels on general satisfaction and easiness of use. Looking to the task two, there are no significant differences in quantitative analysis, due to low sample sizes, because we only have 6 users submitting results for XML and only 1 for YARN. For the modifiability variable in the qualitative analysis, the 83% of XML users scored it with a 5, and the only YARN user scored it with a 3. And for the SparkQL generate users, they didn't reach this task due to difficulties to finish the first one. So let's see the discussion. So we can say that the SparkQL generate design is having a bad effect on first-time users, so they found it difficult to use and learn. But between SEX and YARN, they offer more or less the same features, so where's the difference? So our hypothesis is that the difference is in the syntax. And there is also an interesting image that there are the variables that are bad score in the 3 languages, which is, by the way, a call to action to the community. So the user said that the language design leads to commit errors, that they offer a bad error reporting system, and they do not see much applicability in these tools. So let's see some actions to take from this experiment. So looking to the outputs from the experiment, we need to take care of how new features are added and designed in languages in order to avoid bad impact on usability and learnability. We also need to take care of badly scored variables in the 3 languages. There is something interesting when studying applicability and learnability on first-time users, as we are seeing how they are gonna adopt this language. So this is something that we have to care about. So as I said, in the semantic web community, we used to focus on new features and technical improvements, but we need to develop more user-centric approaches, which is, by the way, a new and recent shift of paradigm. From a methodological perspective, we need to use stronger methods to support our hypotheses and conclusions. So in our study, we use statistical hypothesis testing. And why? In order to avoid erroneous conclusions, to corroborate that our findings were not obtained just by chance, to take into account the variance, and also to measure the evidence strength. So in statistical vocabulary, that's the effect size. So let's see an example from our data. If we look to the precision variable, we see that the XML mean is 0.49 and the YARN mean is 0.13. So intuitively, XML users are more precise. But if we run a statistical test, we see that statistically they are not. And why? Because this statistical testing is taking into account the variance. So this is why these methods are very important. So we also need to cover more studies because we only cover first-time users with some background knowledge. So we have to cover more profiles in order to have a whole perspective of the topic. We also have to compare visual and non-visual approaches in order to discern preferences by profiles. And we also need to clarify the differences in syntax. So we need experiments that come closer to users' mental processes, and one possibility is to use cognitive models and frameworks, which can deliver explanations to empirical studies. So now let's see the conclusions and some take-home lessons. So we need to focus on users, understand them, and take care of their needs. So to say, put them in the center of our solutions, which is a recent trend in the semantic web community. So we have seen an example of a heterogeneous data mapping languages study and its outcomes. So the conclusions are that we have to take care of features design. We need to do more experiments. We need to involve users in our solutions, and we need to use use strong methodological and analysis systems, because statistics are an ally, not an enemy. And this is very related with learning from other scientific fields on how they do their methodological parts and how they analyze their results. And that's the end of my presentation. So if you have any question.
Great, thank you very much.